Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Off the Rack, a comic book review show where typically myself, Sal, and my wife, Tiffany, and co-host, amazingly enough, talk about comic books in the past week. What we do is, this is the breakdown of the show, ladies and gentlemen. We take the news from the past week, we talk about some of the highlights, then we jump into some comic book reviews, and then throughout the show, of course, we will receive, hopefully, Lord willing, it's up to you. Some super chats. If you want to sponsor today's show, for example, using new super chats to ask a question or comment, we'll read it here on the show. And then at the end of the show, or the review portion, we will, or I will, select a book of the week, a book that I found was particularly exceptional from the smattering of titles that we read. I don't know why I'm wearing headphones. I'm not talking to anybody right now. But yeah, from there, then we will read your super chats and answer your questions or respond to your comments or make whatever references to whatever you want to talk about, really. And then recommend some books that are coming out this week that we think you should check out. Folks, let's address the lack of grace in the room. Although I will point out that Tiffany is getting represented through this Muppet version of herself over here, which is typically seen on a show that is not on this channel. But before we jump into that, yes, Tiffany's not here. She's not feeling well. She's feeling fine, actually, but she something has stricken her throat with some kind of illness, and so as a result, she's unable to speak, or at least not at any great length. And so she took the day off today from both work at her actual job and here at her not so actual job, but still equally valid, I believe, job. But yeah, she is not going to be here for this episode, so it's just going to be me. But I will not be alone, because this episode is going to be bombed in on by none other than the writing hive mind known, I believe, as Hive Mind, but it's a duo known as Collin Kelly and Jackson Lanzing are going to come in, talk a little bit about their upcoming flagship, title included, Star Trek series, which I'm excited to talk about because I think I can say this. I read it and I'm hyped to talk about it because, it's the biggest push for a Star Trek comic since the relaunch years ago. And I'm really excited to talk about it. I was really excited to be given the opportunity to read that first issue, which is, by the way, on sale now. Anyway, before the duo joins us in this episode, let's jump into some news, shall we? First of all, I want to thank everybody for watching the episode of Back Issues over on youtube.com/ComicPop, where Tiffany hosted an episode on Batman City of Madness from Christian Ward. Credible book, fantastic episode, a lot of fun to shoot, a lot of fun to edit, and really, really great to see people's reactions to it. I was more than a little floored to see one of those reactions was none other than Christian Ward himself, who was like really kind and complimentary about just hopefully getting the book out. It was interesting because he had not known about the episode, but he was like, hey, I did this book a year ago and it's Halloween season. You might want to check it out. And I'm like, way ahead of you, pal. And he was like, wow. And so that was really nice. It was nice to get that kind of acknowledgement. But yeah, man, that episode came out. We were very happy about it. Hopefully you guys had a fantastic Halloween as well. Before we get into the news, I guess I need to address the other issue, which is, where the hell did the trick-or-treaters go? I've had, ebbs and flows of trick-or-treaters over the years to our place. And, it's gone from like 2 to maybe up to 11 or so. But this year, 1. And only because that kid lived on the same street and he was, an intrepid young lad, the kind of kid who, understands a good deal when he sees one. Like, I live on this road. You have a jack-o'-lantern out in front. I'm going to that house. It's funny. A friend of mine actually brought this up because she has kids and they're of trick-or-treating age. And she's like, they get tired. They were kind of like, I'm done. She's like, I don't know about you. And I can tell you based on what you see before you. Yeah, obviously I was not going to pass up an opportunity to get some candy, but I don't know. I pushed the envelope when it came to the limits of acceptability. When it came to the nighttime trick-or-treating tradition, I was out there till after 9, just being like, yo, I mean, I know that you've still got candy, if your light's on, we're all good here. but I don't know. I'm blown away because I was just so disappointed. This year in particular was a weak one. And I don't know what it is. I got a ton of candy, which I need to donate. If anybody has any suggestions about where I can get rid of this stuff, because I'm not going to eat it, but I do want to get rid of it, and I want it to go to a good home. I wanted it to go to kids. Here's a weird phenomenon. We had, after a certain hour, like after like 4 or 5 hours of waiting, we were like, that's enough. I got a rock. Nice job. But before we even got out there, we waited about 4 or 5 hours, and then we were like, that's enough. So we went and got Tex-Mex, the most traditional of Halloween dining options. And I caught on the Ring camera, or our equivalent thereof. I don't think it's actually officially a Ring, so I don't want to give any branding out when it's not due. But a couple of girls came, barely wearing a costume, but look, after a certain hour, they probably read the room as well, and they were like, yo, I got to get candy somehow. We certainly did that. I know during COVID, our neighborhood, that was like a contactless trick-or-treating situation, they just had bowls of candy just sitting out, nobody watching anything. I'm like, okay, well, let's go. And I forgot about that. There's an episode of a podcast we do on this channel, No Comic Required. Most recent episode, we talked all about it. And I forgot to mention that we actually did go properly trick-or-treating during the lockdowns. And we definitely avail ourselves of candy. And I will point out that we did also wear outfits. Those outfits were, kigurumis of some type, but still, anyway, that's all to say. Nothing, because I was just really wasting time and vamping. But in any event, the trick-or-treaters are bubkis. They're gone. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's weird. It's weird and suspicious. Anyway, let's have no more of that. I will get into the news, but before we do, I guess we should welcome at least 50% of our team for today's episode to chat about Star Trek: The Last Starship. Man, Collin Kelly, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you, man. I believe this is our first introduction. I'm excited to have you here. I'm a great admirer of your work. We've done a number of reviews of the books you've done with your writing partner as well.
Yes. My more brunette half.
Yes, indeed. He and I met recently at a New York Comic-Con gathering. So
I have heard of this New York Comic-Con. I hope to return one day to it. It is the weekend before both my birthday and my son's birthday.
Ah, well, yeah.
I could care less about my birthday, but he turned 1 this year.
So that's kind of a significant one. Yeah, I can understand.
A little bit of a significant one. Hopefully, though, I will be able to return to Comic-Con next year or the year after.
Well, we'd love to have you, man.
I'm also realizing that this exact moment is involving the sun coming in through my one little rainbow prismatic window. So I look absolutely blessed.
Yes, yes. Angelic, you might say.
Yeah, my Irish ancestry is shining down on me. Truly, I am the gold at the end of the rainbow.
And not to be outdone, Jackson Lanzing, also welcome to the show, man. Thank you for being here.
Of course, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, so I'm hyped to talk about this because I will admit I just read the first issue today,
Nice.
And that's just because I honestly didn't know when it came out, but I did get a copy, and I'm really thrilled about it. Just as a little bit of a preamble, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Writing Duo Hive Mind, Collin Kelly and Jackson Lanzing, the masterminds behind the brand new flagship, if you will, series Star Trek: The Last Starship, which is on sale now, second printing up for pre-order now, by the way. This, I feel like, and I think it's true, is the biggest Star Trek comic launch since the relaunch a couple of years ago. And so I'm thrilled to see you guys at the helm, so to speak.
Yeah. So they tell us, and I think that was truthfully not that we were relatively in doubt. We were there for the flagship relaunch. We were the writers on Star Trek, so we had we'd hit a really, I think on that book, for lack of a better metaphor, I'm just going to use baseball because we live in Los Angeles and the World Series just happened, so everything's a baseball metaphor.
Right.
But keep in mind, I know nothing about baseball. We really just were like hitting it straight down the middle on that book, right? Like that book was your favorite Star Trek characters in your classic Star Trek setting, enjoying some additional adventures and sequelizing stories that people have been waiting 20 some odd years to see sequelized. Like that book was one of those, like, if you're a Star Trek fan, I dare you not to like this kind of books, right?
Yes.
And I think so when it launched well and the Eisner noms came and all of that kind of stuff, that felt obviously like incredible. Success is never guaranteed in any industry, let alone comics. But it felt like we'd really succeeded in I think our core ambition, which was to make a Star Trek book that every Star Trek fan could pick up. But
yes,
the whole time that we were doing that, we kept for the 3 years we were doing that book. We would go out to conventions and we would talk to fans, and we would talk to our friends, we would talk to all these people who were either reading the book or not. And whenever they weren't reading the book, we would hear over and over again people say, well, I'm just not a Star Trek guy. Like people who loved our Captain America run or our Batman Beyond, or even our more like controversial stuff like our Guardians run, or like the stuff that's like for the real heads. People would still be like, nah, but I'm not going to take a chance on Star Trek because I don't know about it. It's not my thing. I'm not going to do that. And I thought to myself, Collin and I think just for the last like couple of years have been sort of really pushing ourselves against that phrase and being like, can we solve that? Can we make a book that is fundamentally for comics fans, that isn't for Star Trek fans, that is for anybody who wants to read a great comic, who loves great comic action, who loves great comic layout, who loves great comic storytelling, who loves single issue stuff, but also like longer form storyline content, and like, can we really tell a story that is specific for comics and gets away from anything that anybody would be like, oh, well, I need to know that. Gives you no characters you need to know, gives you a new setting, a new context, all that stuff. And that's where Last Starship came from, was this idea of, can we tell a story that takes place hundreds and hundreds of years in the future in a time period that's only been hinted at by the shows, but that gives us a great framework to tell a new kind of story with a new kind of frame, and something that really feels like we can talk about what's going on outside while still introducing a bunch of like new Star Trek ideas to the table, and do it in the most like comic book way possible. And I think that like the fact that then resulted now in issue 1 selling out, us going to a second printing, there's been a lot of hype on issue 2 and issue 3 this week, which has been just incredible to see. I think a lot of the press has gotten the first look at that, and I just think those books are as good or better than what we were doing in issue 1. I think the book's really finding its feet over the course of that first 3, just sort of the first chapter of the book. And I think getting a chance to really show people what that is and see them respond so well to it has been really heartening, because I hope that at least some of the people out there who've been saying, well, I'm not a Star Trek guy, and so they would never even like think to crack the book, give it a second chance and see if maybe they're not a Star Trek person, but maybe they can be a Last Starship person, and that's enough,
Yeah, to extend the baseball analogy, it's been all our last run was all fastballs and dingers, right? But you might sit around for a whole game and just waiting for that last dinger in the 9th, and you're like, dang, that's fun baseball. But really only if you're a real head. What we're doing now is playing small ball, right? It's about the scene-to-scene work. It's about these quiet moments. It's about the stuff that isn't necessarily going to be straight down the middle. We're playing the corners. We're playing off singles and doubles, and every single inning, you're going to be watching something that's unexpected, that you won't know what's going to happen. And because of that, you're not going to be relying on the old classics. You're going to be engaged every moment. So it's a 12-inning game, and we're going to keep you thrilled to your seats.
Man, thank you for putting actual baseball metaphors behind my completely not baseball metaphor. Good work. That's a hive mind in action right there.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. That's actually that does end up helping me out, because I was interested in asking you guys about the process a little bit, about how it is working together for so long and how that combination works and what the process is for you guys. Like, I assume, based on the fact that you're adult men who have other things going on. They don't live together, so it's not as conducive. You got to work together over Zoom, and you got to like meet
Yeah.
or at some point or another. But like, what's the process like? Let's talk about Last Starship in terms of like, how did you guys crack this concept and then execute, let's say, the script for issue 1?
Sure, yeah. So Jack and I have been friends for 20 years, writing partners for 15, might be more like 16 or 17 at this point. And while no, we have, thank God, never lived together. That would have absolutely detonated the working relationship. We've always lived relatively close to each other. And for the first, 12 years of our partnership, we would spend every Thursday night and every Sunday together working. We're best friends outside of being a partnership. So you kind of, just like with your best friends, you start to develop a shared language. You start to spend a lot of time together, think a lot like each other, but also really know how to kind of push each other's buttons. But the best thing about that is, you're effectively, we like to say, like, steel sharpens steel. Like,
Yes.
if you're getting into an argument with love in your heart, right, we will go hammer and tongs at each other, but it's always towards the end of creating the best story possible until we can both sit down and say, like, man, that's cool. And then once we're both like surly and upset because we've just come up with the coolest possible answer, then we know we got something, and we put down all that bullshit and we say, great, time to work.
Yeah, it's I think it's a blessing that we do live in the same city. So often we do work in the same place. Collin and I are we're in a room digitally every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on a video game that we work on. It's a room that I run in Amazon called March of Giants. And so we naturally start the day 3 times a week with each other, just going through stuff, writing that game, which is like a new IP. So we're sort of building from scratch. It's a great kind of like almost a warm-up every day that's also a job. Like it's great.
Yeah.
And then on the days that we're not necessarily on Mog, what we'll do is we'll get together at each other's houses. I'll go over to his house, he'll come over to mine. This is the Hive Mind office right here. Like you can look around, and like that
I've been looking around. It's a great office.
That bat lift is owned by both of us. Like our research is over there. Like everything that we do is effectively designed to share the weight, share the glory, share the good times, share the bad times, have a guy at your back. In terms of how a story actually gets cracked, we get together in this space, and as Collin said, we argue and we talk. Last Starship, I think, is a great example of this, because basically what happened there was, and that happened over the course of almost 2 years. Last Starship took a long time to develop, because it really started from us saying, as I said, what do we want to do about this whole thing where we can't get people into Star Trek, even though the Star Trek books are great and Eisner nominated and all this stuff, and still people won't read them because they're not Star Trek people. It's like, all right, well then can we give them something that's totally fresh and totally new? And looking outside our window, obviously we were seeing, we're both, political guys, and we're both people with a lot of sort of like social awareness. And I think one thing that is very hard for either of us to not see, I think it's very hard for anybody to not see right now, is that regardless of where you sit along the political spectrum, the systems that were designed to keep us all safe and fed and able to compete in a marketplace and like all the other stuff, they're all failing. Or they're being supplanted or replaced by things that we don't entirely understand. And so as those things are happening, I think it becomes, that kind of feeds a sort of desire to write about that kind of thing. And I think you're seeing that right now with, Dennis Camp's Ultimates, for instance, or with Scott Snyder's Absolute Batman, where like you're very specifically seeing, okay, how do we take the class anxiety and the generalized anxiety of living in collapsing societies and write about that through the lens of this fiction that helps us as writers understand it, and hopefully helps the reader get through another day of it. Because I think that's what the best we can do.
Yeah, once we kind of found that was kind of the question of like, well, what do we want to write about? It starts kind of combing through the Star Trek of it all, because you do need some flavors for the old heads, but primarily this is supposed to be for new folks. And then we realized that there was a moment in Star Trek canon that gave us that exact kind of setting. wherein everything was desperate, where all the systems were falling apart, and most importantly, something we'd heard of but we'd never actually seen. So it kind of splits that difference between the things that you might know and the things that you've never expected. And that is once we realized that the setting of the burn was 100 years of untold history that we could dive into and kind of essay ourselves.
And look, you can be a Star Trek Discovery fan and know what that means, but you don't have to be. In fact, in many ways for our book, it is best that you aren't. It's best that you come in fresh and that you get to get surprised by what happens, that you get to feel on that tension of what's going on. So that for us was like great, because then when you're like, oh, being a fan is actually like damaging to your ability to get into this at first because you have all these like preconceived notions. Great. That's when we're going to be going after a targeted new person and really try to open this up for them, and then invite the old heads to discover what we are doing as old heads ourselves, right? And I think so we start talking about how do we make that happen? What is that? What does that look like? How do you tell a story that takes place over 100 years? What kind of mechanisms do you need to put into your book to make that make sense over the course of a series of issues? Not the least of which to make character continuity over that amount of time. Like, how do you do that? What are you doing? And I think you'll see the answers to that more and more start to sort of come up in the second arc. But I think additionally, it opened up a great conversation for us about what kinds of characters do we want to see Star Trek, see sort of represent Star Trek to a new fan. And that really becomes just, again, an ongoing conversation. The same way that we might talk about the cast of NYX or the cast of Thunderbolts or the cast of Guardians, where we'll sit there and kind of draft and say, who do you like? What are you interested in? What's the thing you like? What's the thing that you've been wondering for? So I'll say, hey, I really think it would be great if we had a like very diplomatic captain who's old school Federation, who's so old school Federation that he belongs to several of the Federation species. He's like chimeric in that respect. And that he has and then he's a person without a homeworld, and except for the entire Federation. And as we watch the Federation fall apart, he's going to be slowly losing that homeworld. That feels really engaging, and it feels like he would have something to learn out of like going through the bad times, because he's a person who had never been through them. We said, great, that sounds awesome. All right, well, we should pair him with a young, interesting human character who thinks he's beyond all of that stuff. Like, let's give you a character who, Roddenberry always had this idea of like humans evolving past their baser instincts. He used to think his big thing was like, we don't grieve anymore, which I always thought was like a really wild concept.
And the idea that like we can evolve out of like a need for capitalism. That's not evolution, like that's social development, Gene.
Right. But Gene saw that as a biological process and as a social process, and so we take that at face value and say, okay, great. In 700 years, there's some kid who thinks he's evolved past fear. What does that mean? What does that look like? Who is that person if they're looking at the world and being like, I literally can't feel fear. Okay, well, what happens when you get put in a scenario where fear becomes necessary? We've been writing a lot of Klingons over the years. We've sort of developed this Klingon cult and religious organization called the Red Path over many, many years now. Let's bring that back. Let's see what that looks like 700 years later, and let's put its tenets to the test after that, right? And on and on. Like, let's just look at these characters and say, where are these great characters that are going to give us something great? Let's put Anthony Bourdain in the med bay, but he's a Ferengi, right? Like, let's have fun with these characters and see what we enjoy. And then hopefully that enjoyment, that engaging, those new characters that you don't need to know anything about, that aren't from Star Trek canon, that are brand new things, become an onboarding ramp for us. And then I genuinely think it was Collin who was like, to give him his credit, who was like, yeah, but where's the thing that's going to make an old school person pick up this book if they don't trust anything else? What's the thing that's going to like lens this back into Star Trek and make it feel like Star Trek no matter what we do, and make us look at Star Trek in that way that we have to all the time? And, who can we bring into this frame that reminds us that this is, at the same time as it's a deconstruction, it is also classic Star Trek. And that's why, out of that conversation and a lot of argument about who that character is and what that looks like, we eventually we get to the point of like, well, who would it hurt the most? Yeah. Who would the burn be the worst for? The burn is the end of the Federation. Who built the Federation? And who would want to see that thing, who would never want to see that thing fall apart? James Kirk. And so and from that lens, suddenly Kirk is on the book. And then we're looking at how do you challenge that character, and that's how you get to the Borg, and that's how you get to Jurati, and on, right? The process is really just us sitting around and talking about what would be awesome. And then as soon as we find something that we both think is awesome, it goes on the board. And that doesn't mean it makes the project, right? Something might make the board and then you're like, this just doesn't belong here when you actually try to do it. But by and large, we try to find something that we both think is great. And if we both think it's great, then there's a good chance not everybody will think it's great. We're not writing for everyone. We're writing for people who dig what we do and want to do what we're doing and want to get where we're going. But for those people, we think they'll dig it. And then you take your swing and hope it's good.
Absolutely. It's interesting because you brought up a lot of elements that I think make sense through the lens of Trek and the problem that Star Trek has seemingly had since its inception, which is mass appeal, which is getting that coveted new, used to be viewer, now reader, and I think also viewer sometimes, where it's like, how do we get? I mean, that's where Abrams comes from. It's like, how do we get like the regular people, like people who have never read Star Trek, watch Star Trek, to get in on it? And it's always been a struggle for them. It's
always been a struggle. And then for a while there, Star Trek fans, it turns out, even though we worship at the feet of infinite diversity and infinite combinations, decided to gatekeep the hell out of Star Trek. Like, I don't know how many fans we've talked to. They're like, well, I'm not really a Star Trek fan. I mean, I love the Kelvin verse, where it's like, oh, I'm not really, but I mean, Lower Decks is great. It's like, you're a Star Trek fan then. Right?
Yeah,
like, that has been something that they were fighting, and then something that I think they have done so well in these past, decade and a half, right, of making Star Trek so much more approachable to lots of different people, I think has been absolutely divine, because yes, everybody is chasing that coveted new demographic, and it's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to do it by just approaching them where they live in their thing, right? Like, I don't think it's enough to say, oh, we're going to make, use the upcoming Starfleet Academy as an example. It's not enough to say, okay, we're going to make a college show, but with Star Trek. No, it's still needs to be a Star Trek show. And that show has mechanisms inside of it that allow it to be a Star Trek show while also being a YA show. And I think that you always need to look at, like, how are we bending this format to make it at least viably Star Trek? And then where can you just throw, like, the most Star Trek, right? Like, Strange New Worlds is just Star Trek, capital T, capital S, Star Trek. And I think I think what we're trying to do is say, okay, you've got a lot of places on TV to see these kind of like genre bends on Star Trek. What we wanted to do is say, all right, let's do the show they would never make.
Right.
Like, let's do the show that would be dangerous, that would be hard, that would be sad. Let's give them the, for lack of a better term, because I don't think that this is really appropriate, but like, let's give them the HBO Star Trek. Let's give them the Trek that I would read if I was looking for something to break my heart. And that's not something Star Trek does a lot, and it's certainly not where its television is anchored, and for good reason, because that's very risky. In comics, that risk is mitigated. In comics, we get to play that way. And we're students of, we came up under people like James Tynion and Tom King, and like, these are guys from whom we learned and who we really look up to. And I think something that both of those writers are really excellent about is getting at that like dark nature of the human soul, while also getting at the really like fuzzy, true, like kindness in the human soul. And I think that and playing those things off of each other and making it very human, for lack of a better term. And so I think this was our attempt to say, okay, can we do that with Star Trek? Can you do a Star Trek that is not a hard sci-fi story, but is really a very human story that has sci-fi to get us along the line and keep it engaged?
Well, and it's also there's some smart math going on with this book too, because it's not it's one thing to say, oh, we're doing a fresh take, we're doing a new timeline, we're doing these world outside your window, forgive TM copyright of that expression, but you're also giving them some things that are just kind of deeply at the core of being a fan, particularly of Star Trek. Like, for example, new starship, which means on some level you got to be like, well, maybe they'll make like a toy or a model of my but there's something fun about that where like the audience goes, ooh, new starship for me to obsess over and figure out and hope there's blueprints of and all that stuff.
1000%. There's your dingers, right?
And and that's also the thing. That's the candy, right? They're like,
yes.
They're like, all the stories we can do. It's like, well, we've got to take the Klingons somewhere. It's like, well, could you use another race? Yes, but I want to use the Klingons, right? It's like, ultimately, we write for each other as well, and we're both very different guys, and we really like different things. But odds are, one of us likes something, and then it gets to go in the stew, as we like to say. But towards maybe they'll make a toy. We actually have have a really good working relationship with Star Trek Online, and they have released both the Theseus and the Omega in Star Trek Online, with like kits that are actually comic book accurate, and like, so now we have these absolutely, effectively film quality models zipping around Star Trek Online, and like, does it feel cool? Yes. Having a toy of your Batman Beyond being created. Yes. I mean, like, comics writing is fucking hard, right? Yep. All jobs are hard. It's a hard job. It's got a lot of crazy shit, but at the end of the day, that's pretty cool.
There are beautiful things about it. Certainly, I want to run in that the sort of first part of that conversation. I want to really highlight, because I think that this is, when you say like there's some smart math in this book, I appreciate that. Well, I also want to make sure that it's clear, like, the book isn't math.
No,
right?
No, it's not an algorithm. You're not trying to,
Oh no, I know. I more mean, I think sometimes when we talk about this book, especially on the high level, we sort of talk about the tactic of the book. Hey, we're trying to get new readers in. Hey, we're trying to find a new space for you. Hey, we're trying to build this space for you. And that might seem, to the wrong ear, like we are sitting there going, "Mwahaha, how do we build the perfect trap? How does our trap perfectly?" And you're never going to do that. That's not how writing works. And it's certainly not how fiction works. Dude, if I tried to describe to you most of the things that become hits, they would not seem like hits. That's not how it works. But and we've been in the business, trust me, long enough to know that. Not just in comics, but in film and television, where that's all the harder. And where the risk is much greater. And in games, where the risk is much greater and much more collaborative, right? Like, we work in a lot of spaces where we've learned math is not actually it. A lot of it is about that feeling you get. Yeah. And so to Collin's point, I think this book really is a writing it for each other book at this point, especially now that we're like deep in it. Mm-hmm. Because now the point is we look at each other and say, like, what kind of feeling are we trying to give each other? What's the vibe as because we are above all things Star Trek fans. Like, we are. There's no stopping it. It's just true. I wish I could like be all too cool for school, but I showed you we have a batleth. Like, I'm like, and that's not just like any batleth. That is that is the fourth produced screen accurate model of the Sword of Kahless, made by the actual prop maker from Deep Space Nine for us. It was I had to pay for the airplane steel. It was great. But I think the fun of it for us now is writing a book where we're simultaneously surprising each other with like great new kinds of things that we've never done before. There's some horror coming in the third arc. Issue 7 has some of the spookiest, just purely like disturbing stuff we've ever written by a fair mile, certainly since Clayface.
I was going to say, I mean, these are the guys who brought us Clayface, which has a ton of
and
horror and fear, and
we're engaging with that part. I mean, that we tend to look at Clayface as one of the best things we've ever done. I'm very, very proud of that book, and I think that we really wanted to engage that part of ourselves as we got into the darker part of this book, which is sort of where chapter 3 kicks off around issue 7. So as we got into that, we're doing that. But at the same time, there's little lines or little phrases or little moments or little bits where you'll go, that's for the Star Trek fan in me. And I felt it, and I knew that was cool, and I want to know more about that. And like, you just introduced a term, I want to hear about that. Or, that's like, the entire horror of this issue is based on a really deep dive question that I've been asked a lot since we announced Last Starship from really hardcore Star Trek nerds. And it was not something that we were going to address, in all honesty. But then we were talking about the arc, and we were like, well, it's not like it can be anchored on this without being about this. Like,
Right.
I don't need to explain this to a fan, to like a not fan, for them to understand what's going on. But if you are a fan, then you'll be like, oh, I see the wow.
Yeah,
and like it's the same thing as having new uniforms, new comm badges, new ships, new patterns, new looks at old species. Like all that stuff is we're always looking to like provide not a fan service for fan service's sake, but the stuff that we as fans would know we'd get psyched about. That goes in Last Starship, because what we're trying to do is make new Star Trek.
Yep.
We can only do that honestly by doing
it's the best kind of fan service. Star Trek fan service is the best kind of fan service because it's respectful as hell.
Yeah.
In this starship, in this universe, we respect everyone for their rights and their autonomy. Mm-hmm. So the men can wear skirts, and the uniforms can get cooler and cooler.
Yeah. I vividly recall, like, just when I think it was like when they did the upscaling for TNG, and I was like, "What is that? A dude in a skirt?"
Yeah, but they dropped it after the after Encounter at Farpoint. But I think it's great that they did it.
But what the hell, you know? I mean, right?
Yep,
no, it's nice. But
also, I've got my eyes on your chat, and the love that folks are showing to some of our books is really stupendous.
Oh well, I mean,
I don't
have eyes on your chat. That's lovely.
Yeah, I know, right? I love.
Oh man, yeah,
shout
people
out,
were hyped.
Shout out to the person who read our Alien Black, White, and Red.
Dude, right? Utopia is just an incredible story, and really a great use of alien lore and getting it in the beautiful format of Black, White, and Blood. I love seeing that book.
I mean, Dowling just killing that art.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And honestly, kind of Last Starship,
very much so.
V0. Like, I think that was our first, like, okay,
foray into
really austere, not about what's said, mostly about what's not said.
Mm-hmm.
Really lean into the art, really lean into the darkness. While we were in the middle of a very optimistic Star Trek run, so
right, yeah. Well, that's a good way to balance it too, because you can't have light without the dark, as the great Bob Ross once said. Yeah, I have to
for fiction, Bob Ross.
I have to ask, which one of you guys came up with "Are You Afraid of the Dark Side"?
Neither.
Oh, was it?
No, neither. That was I
worked on it.
I put good money on that having been Dave Wielgos, who was the editor of that book at the time, like, we're one of the editors on that book at the time. If it wasn't him, it was probably Andrew Marino. If it wasn't Andrew Marino, maybe it was Jeff Chen. Like, there was a great
There's a line,
There's a great young bullpen of editors at DC, especially at that time during those that would come up with those names. So we would get those would show up to us before we had the our story. And then they'd be like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, would you like to write a "Are You Afraid of the Dark Side"?
Yeah, and you're like, well, I heard that title. I definitely do. Yes. Before we go, because I also want to hype up Clayface again, because I understand the movie just finished filming. I don't know anything about Clayface. All I do know is there's an incredible book called Batman One Bad Day Clayface, No Notes, which is phenomenal. Self-contained graphic novel that could or couldn't be in continuity, but I think works either way. And it's not only, I think, some of the best work of you guys' career, though I think Last Starship is abutting that distinction. Zermanico, unmatched, unbelievable.
What the hell, man?
No business being that.
Zermanico is one of those sort of treasures as an artist, because he is simultaneously incredibly good and also just getting started. Like, I don't think people know what that. I think wait 20 years, we're still gonna be seeing groundbreaking work from Zermanico. I am a gigantic booster of his. If it were up to me, he'd be drawing 98% of our books. If it weren't for how good Adrian Bonilla is, I'd be stealing him for Last Starship, But I don't know if it's just we really get along with Spaniards between Zermanico and Adrian and Carmen Carnero, our sister in comics. Like
we love food, being passionate, and napping. We're Spaniards at heart.
We really do get along with Spaniards, though, and we tend to do really good work when paired with Spanish artists. I don't know why, but it does tend to happen. I was just looking, just to big up Zermanico for a second. I was just reading, it's still here. I was just reading DCKO.
Oh yeah,
and he has the totally thankless job of coming in the middle of a book drawn by Javi Fernandez, another artist who we have worked with, who we desperately love, and who someday I hope we reunite with, because to this day, every time I see him, he's like, the best pages I ever did were those Green Arrow, those like Vertigo Green Arrow pages in a book that like no one read. I love it so much. But like Zermanico has to come into the middle of that and do the like interstitials.
Yeah,
and they're gorgeous. Like it's like somehow the book takes a level up, even though Javi Fernandez has been doing the book up to that. Like I just think he's clearly a master and is just like people are unprepared for what he's going to do.
We will fight tooth and nail to work with Zermanico again, just like we'll fight tooth and nail to work with Carmen Carnero again. Yeah. Sometimes you just find those artists that absolutely match your style and get what you're throwing down.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we're going to make them fall in love and cry. And you're like, yes, yes.
We're so proud of One Bad Day. That book is such a fun like surprise, because it wasn't even a thing that, like, honestly, I've said this before. I don't think I'm like blowing up anybody's spot. It was not a book we ever would have done. Genuinely. Like,
no, I heard that was just a pitch to you. They were like, "Oh, you guys, Clayface."
Yep.
And you were like,
It was Dave Wilgos came to us, laid out all the teams on the One Bad Day books.
Yeah, started the conversation with, so I'm starting this line. We're doing this line called One Bad Day, and it's got Tom King. It's got rattling off, and like that's how he led into it, was bragging basically about
G. Willow and Tom Taylor and Jerry Duggan, and you're like, what is going on? Like, why are you telling us any of this? Right. They're like, we want you to do Clayface with Zermanico. And we were like, why? I mean, like, no, like, of course, but like, why? Because we're not really horror writers, and like Clayface is kind of the monster guy. And he goes, well, because you've been Hollywood screenwriters for like 15 years. Like, you were Hollywood before you were comics. You must have horror stories. And it's like, oh, you know us too well. Yes, Dave, we have horror stories. And then got to like bleed out into that book this enormously, like, for us, very honest experience of being in Hollywood and what it's like to come here with a dream and mostly get kicked around and try to survive in it and like balance what successes you do have with the ambition that you're fighting. And like, it became this very personal story, kind of about like what Collin and I would be without each other to some degree. Like, just like what it's like for like loneliness in Hollywood.
To be alone. Yeah. To be alone.
To be alone and to think like, well, if I only killed my friend and stuffed them in my trunk, then I could have the job. Then I could get the full paycheck, and no one would stop. No one would take half my money.
He's gonna appear between those French doors. You're gonna be like,
yeah, exactly. But I think it was the fact that it did turn out so well, and then again, all credit to Dave. That Dave like pushed us to make it more personal, to make it stronger. Like, that was a book that he rarely like really rattled us over the coals on notes. But I remember on that book we did a really big second draft. Because he was like, I think you guys have something really special here. Now push it. And I think he might have been the first person to realize, like, we really like a second draft. Heather Antos has unfortunately learned this so much that it is a guaranteed thing for us now. Like, we're never going to get a first draft past Heather for the rest of our lives. And I think if we ever do, I'll really pat myself on the back. But I think Dave and Heather are two of the editors that have really over the years gotten how to get the best out of us. And I'm very thankful to both of them for giving us these two opportunities, because between Clayface and Last Starship, I think, again, we're doing the work that we're doing the kind of work we set out in this industry to do. And that really feels like we can be proud of it. And I can shout from the rooftops about it without feeling like a mercenary or like I'm trying to lure you into reading a book.
Right. You're not a carnival barker, even though as a comic book writer, you have to be.
God, Stan kind of made it so we all had to be. It kind of
I don't know. Do you think it was Stan's fault, or do you think Stan just read the room where he's like, they're not going to buy it unless you can also juggle and sing?
Let me be clear. Yes, you are correct. Stan read the room, but as a result of having read the room and set
the standard now. So
he is the standard, and we all have kind of had to sit inside of that standard a little bit.
It's funny because you think also, like, just in that vein, just to go off on that tangent for a second, like there was a nice little grace period before the internet where you could enjoy some anonymity and just kind of do your job and go home. But once Twitter was invented, it kind of just blew the doors out, where it's like, oh, I've heard horror stories of just being like, well, how many followers do you know? But that's the case with everything you do. I mean, you don't get an acting job unless you have a ton of Instagram followers. You don't get a freaking writing job unless you have this kind of built-in audience and all that stuff. And it's just like, well, what if I could just do the job and I can write in English? Can that, is that enough?
It's like I always I got mad respect for folks like Ben Percy.
Yeah.
Like, Ben, what do you do on the internet? He's like, nothing.
Like,
what? I live in the woods. I write books, and then I go back to the woods. I'm like,
yeah.
Fucking love a wilderness king. Ben Percy, I aspire to that level.
Well, that dude, you don't mess with him. You're just kind of like, okay, fair enough. Okay, you can be the exception.
And yet, genuinely one of the coolest, nicest guys.
Oh my god!
Sweet.
Like when we go to those like Marvel summits or whatever, right? And it's like a room full of all of your faves, right?
Yeah.
Like the two people who I always know are like going to just be good hangs are like Al Ewing, because he and I can talk forever about weird shit, and Ben Percy, because he's just so down to earth, so chill, and so good at story that your conversation isn't always about story, but when it gets there, it's always informative and great and thoughtful and not like full of ego. I really like that guy a lot, and I agree. I aspire to his level of not being on the internet. We never lived in that world where the internet was like not a factor. Like by the time we were doing this, we were on Twitter. But I kind of wish we had. That sounds fun. I don't know what
would have been nice. Would have been fun.
Yeah. Well, maybe after the burn.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All we need is the burn.
Yeah.
Collin, Kelly, Jackson, Lanzing, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking a little bit about The Last Starship and more. We really appreciate it. We got to have you back on because I feel like we could do this for another hour. But yeah, before we go, we got to tell folks that issue 2 is on sale on November 19th. So check out your copy of The Last Starship. Of course, the second printing will be available for pre-order or is up for pre-order right now. But yeah, first issue's on sale now, folks. Check it out. James Kirk back from the dead, kind of. Check it out.
Maybe ish.
Yeah, it's never going to be that simple. I immediately I'm like, jeez.
But that's why it's cool, man. If we were just bringing back from the dead, what do we do?
Or was this time travel? It'd be like, oh man,
yeah. I gotcha. Nah.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming by, and we'll see you guys later. Okay, have a great week.
Thank you very much, man. Take it easy. Bye chat.
Folks, Collin, Kelly, Jackson, Lanzing, working on Star Trek The Last Starship. Again, issue 2 on sale on November 19th, one day before Tiffany's birthday, if you're looking for something to get her. But anyway, let's jump into the news before we get into the comics, because because this is normally a show where I have my own life partner, so to speak. It's going to be a smaller amount of books that we're talking about this week. So on one hand, I read this interesting thing. According to the Comic Store reports, in the summer of 2025, the sales surge of comics, I heard it was like 18%. I think I mentioned this in the last episode, of new comics that are being sold are the result not of collectors, but of new readers, which doesn't surprise me in the least, given the push from both Marvel and DC in their new universes. And when you look at historical records of, let's say, when DC launched the New 52, and it was, sales were unprecedented, and it just galvanized them into making, just banger after banger. But no, genuinely, the New 52 appealed to a huge spectrum of either lapsed, new, or just cynical readers, because it was an opportunity, it was an invitation, it was an excuse to start from scratch. And that's what the Ultimate Universe is. That's what the Absolute Universe is. It's just an opportunity to start from scratch. And it just makes perfect sense that the sales surge we've seen over the summer is the result of new readers. I mean, and also hopefully that'll be a nice little pat on the back for the folks in charge of Marvel, DC, and of course the rest. And I say the rest dismissively, but I do mean, they are the lifeblood of the industry. Indie comic publishing and smaller press is where the talent pool comes from. It's where you get, your Brian Bendis's, your Colin Kellys and Jackson Lanzings, where you get your Scott Snyders. It's where you get your brand new, now 20 years on creators from the indie pool. But that said, this should hopefully give those big two publishers an opportunity to go like, okay, we've been chasing new readers with every decision we make when it comes to our mainline books. It turns out that this is what we need to do, not just generate new universes, but have a plan, or at least the makings of one, have high quality comics, and give your readership an excuse. And of course, it goes without saying, but it should be said anyway because it's always forgotten. Marketing. Marketing is so important. Just letting people know. When I say marketing, I think mean promotions, but just letting people know the effing books are out and available. The other thing, in that same vein, the Comics Pro Industry Awards were recently, and there were only about 5 nominees for the Comics Pro Industry Award. And the idea is that there were these 5 different creators or people who worked in the industry in some capacity. For example, Jackie Estrada is a comic book convention organizer. And so her contributions to the comics industry came from that arm. Joe Ferrara was a facilitator of the Spirit of Comics Retailer Award and a comic book retailer who created and runs one of the oldest stores. In fact, his store has been up 50 years, started next year. Nick Barucci, long-term comics industry insider, has been in here 45 years, started Dynamite Entertainment, and of course is the CEO of that company as well. And, let's just say a pal. And Scott Snyder, who is the architect and overseer of the Absolute Universe. The winner was Scott Snyder. Scott is, at the end of the day, if you ask any Tom, Dick, or Harry comic book reader, what is Scott Snyder's role at DC Comics? He's a writer. Like, he writes Absolute Batman. And the funny thing is, he is more than that, in as much as he's also a consultant, but he is not an editor. He's not an executive. He's not the publisher. He's not the CEO of DC Comics or whatever you would call it. He's a writer. And because he had this push to generate the Absolute Universe, wins this award. The Comics Pro Industry Awards recognized him for this contribution because there has been a massive groundswell of attention and enthusiasm and ongoing conversation about the Absolute Universe. And you can trace it all back to what Scott and Joshua Williamson did when they formed the Absolute Universe. I think that's really telling and actually kind of nice to see acknowledged immediately, and it probably speaks to the immediacy of the industry and of media in general. But it's really cool to see that, like, the industry went, look at what happened in just a short year or two, how the industry has responded and what the new readership is all about. People are all about these new books. The hope is that they are a great entry point for the old universes. But I think if there isn't much enthusiasm about the old universe from the new readership, there's plenty of old school readers who are there to keep it alive. The other thing that I thought was interesting was that Marvel's 2026 summer event, Armageddon. Poor Chip Zdarsky is in charge of managing this event. I genuinely hope it works out. I'm looking forward to it. Very great. The I want to say the promotion, like the image that you see to highlight Armageddon is so Chip Zdarsky, it's not even funny. It's just this very graphical, singular, like too monochromatic. What a graphic designer this guy is. Like, I wouldn't be surprised in the least if he did this. But even if he didn't, you can see Zdarsky all over this promotion. But yeah, I hope it works out. That's all. I got to tell you, after New York Comic Con, there's a ton of enthusiasm, excitement, and chatter about the Absolute Universe. Very little conversation about what Marvel's doing, outside of being like, whoa, Marvel really fumbled the bag, didn't they? But you know what? The reality is a rising tide raises all ships. I think we're in a good place for everybody. We just need to maintain optimism and keep doing those Marvel DC crossovers, folks. To that point, by the way, we're also getting reprints. I think they're just reprints. I don't know if they're facsimile editions of the Spider-Man, Superman crossovers, both of them. That's right, there were two. And you can learn all about them over on youtube.com/ComicPop and check out our episodes on them. But yeah, they're doing reprints of those two books. I think that's awesome. I wish and hope that they are treasury editions, that they're big and beautiful. It'd be nice if DC was in charge of the first one so they can just use the same printing process they have for the Black Label books and just make it that way. But yeah, they're gorgeous. And the more tragic thing is the second Superman Spider-Man crossover. Not only is it awful, but it's also... it's been largely out of print for so long that any version you do see is like ugly. Thankfully, you can see it in glorious original colors in the omnibus. So I think the facsimile edition will be nice to see. And of course, they're going to do it again, which I'm really excited about. So what's happening in the world of comics? What's up with comic book news? Well, I had a chance to read Black Cat number 3. That's right. I went back in. G. Willow Wilson, Gleb Melenkov. This is... If you liked the Rainbow Rowell She-Hulk book, you're going to love this. If you like any G. Willow Wilson book, you're going to love this. Melenkov's art is perfectly suited for a Black Cat series, but Wilson's writing tempers Melenkov's predilection for accentuation. Put it that way. Felicia is rather well endowed, and Melenkov doesn't shy away from that. The Black Cat costume in and of itself, you could see it's it celebrates her body, but G. Willow Wilson doesn't allow the book to descend into a book that is just an excuse to look at Black Cat for like 12 pages or 22 pages. I don't remember how many issues there are or pages there are. No, it gives Felicia an arc. It also allows it to be a Black Cat book exclusively, whereas, with the Venom book being so much more anchored to the Spider titles now, you kind of lose its autonomy and feels just like part of the family. This book actually allows Felicia to stretch out of the world from which she originates and become part of a larger, greater Marvel universe, which I think is really cool. And so yeah, that's all I'll say is that it's a solid book. It's well written and it looks great. So where can you go wrong, or how could you go wrong? You can't. Check it out. The other title I read was Superman Red and Blue, the 2025 special. This is a gorgeous book with a handful of fantastic creators on it. Yeah. You got Michael Walsh, Dan Abnett, Paul Dini, Rainbow Rowell, Caitlin Yarsky, Cian Torme, Mirka Andolfo working on this title. Just a handful of great stories about Superman. I thought it was really weird that Josh didn't do a story in here. But there is a preview of Night Fight, which is the upcoming DCKO tie-in book about Batman exclusively, and that is written by Josh. So it's nice to see. But this is also a great opportunity for folks to be exposed to a myriad amount of Superman stories that all kind of work. And I hesitate to say they tell the same story, but they're all very hope-centric. They're all very Superman forward. Although there is one that is clearly inspired by the enthusiasm being shown for Supergirl and the upcoming Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow movie. So, there's going to be some synergy. There's even a story that seems to be drawn specifically with David Cornsweet in mind. But yeah, it's a great book. Beautiful stories. There's one in particular that I loved, which was essentially about Superman and Lois's anniversary, and it manages to be like cemented in continuity while also being its own thing. And I think it was written by Rainbow Rowell. But yeah, this is a really, really great book. If you're not really tied in or locked in with what's going on in Superman comics right now, but you still love the character and you want to celebrate him in some way, and maybe you don't have enough scratch, check out this book. It's really worth the money, and it's more importantly a really great tribute to the character. So that's Superman Red and Blue 2025 special. And finally, the main event, so to speak. Absolute Batman Annual #1. Man, so here's what I'm talking about when it comes to like chatter, enthusiasm, excitement. Absolute Batman, if you're not familiar with this brand that is ComicPop, we have another channel which is much bigger called ComicPop, which has a flagship show on it called Back Issues. And on that show, we talked about the first volume of Absolute Batman. And one of the compliments, criticisms I gave the book overall was that I couldn't imagine anybody else writing Absolute Batman. Is that Scott and Dragata make Absolute Batman. Like, that is the core that makes the book what it is and gives it its identity in every respect. So this is an annual bereft of both creators. This is a book that is really an opportunity to sink or swim Absolute Batman, because Absolute Batman is a huge success and a massive, cultural juggernaut, so to speak. And so while I couldn't imagine the character or the concept of Absolute Batman floundering at this stage, it could, I think, be done a disservice if it was bereft of of genuine weight and substance. Like if Absolute Batman was just big Batman, I don't have any other ideas. He's big. I don't know. If it was much less thoughtful, I think that it would collapse under the weight of what Absolute Batman has become. It don't hurt to put Daniel Warren Johnson on the flagship issue of the annual when it comes to showcasing the character by different creative teams. So smart stuff. But main story is by Daniel Warren Johnson, with colors, of course, by Mike Spicer. And then there is a continuing story from James Harron and colorist Dave Stewart. And then there is a very short story from Meredith McLaren and Andrew Marino. But we all know what you're here to talk about. So before we do that, let's talk really briefly about Harron's story, which is about a home invasion. It's basically Batman, by way of, I don't know, this the panic room. There's a better analogy here, but it's basically, the party animals or some offshoot have broken into one of their own members' father's houses, and they are being hunted by the Absolute Batman. And things don't go their way. I mean, it's a really, really well executed home invasion story, painting Batman as the boogeyman. So that was interesting. And this is showing my ignorance that I'm not too familiar with James Harron's work. So it was an opportunity for me to see Absolute Batman through the lens of somebody whose work I'm not familiar with. And I can tell you, felt authentically Absolute Batman. So again, I think it's working. I think this concept, this annual, it's like that math I was talking about with Collin and Jackson, where I'm like, there is a math, whether you're crunching the numbers yourself or not, that goes into books that get a lot of attention. With Amazing Spider-Man, for example, the math I think had been that you never want to be too controversial, but you always want to keep the readers poked. You want to poke the bear at all times, but you also can never be too committal with the main character. that there's a math there that is, I think, to its detriment, and it's also part of the problems that particularly Jackson Lanzing took with the concept, because one can get in the weeds when it comes to math and how to make a book work. But I do want to give this book its flowers, because there's some smart math and money being played here with this book, because it is, I think, a sink or swim book. It's like, can Absolute Batman survive without Scott Snyder? Yes. But you know what I mean? Yes, asterisk. That's, for me, what I can say about this. But James Herron did a great story. Meredith McLaren, it is more about the concept of Batman within the world of Absolute Batman, within the world of the Absolute Universe. And for that, it is a really interesting and subversive execution. She could have done a 2-page story about Batman knocking the crap out of people. Instead, it was more about the feeling that Batman is creating, the undercurrent of Batman's, impact on the city. Marino's art is also really fun. I'm sorry, Marino was the editor. Meredith McLaren did the writing, artist, coloring, and lettering. Did the whole damn thing. It's a really cool and cute looking double page story, and also uses the formula from the first volume of, like, the bats are weird, bats are crazy, bats are you know team players. I don't remember what the hell they were, but plays with the concept of, like, the zoo placards and infographics. But now on to the main event about Absolute Batman Annual #1. Daniel Warren Johnson. I mean, like, look, man, D-Dubs knows what he's doing. And this is so heavily inspired, I think, by Johnson's interpretation of the world outside his window, while also just being... This book would be, I think, if it came out 20, 30 years ago, it'd be, another Batman story. I think some might actually be like, a little fear-mongery, don't you think? Like, I genuinely believe that it's only in these sensationalist times where we are so polarized and forced into, one of two camps in a system where there is nothing but gray. And I don't know. It's interesting to see the conversation change and the interpretation of the same art change over a period of decades. And it must explain why old people are so tired all the time. Superficially speaking, the book looks great. It's beautifully written, and it is supremely authentic in its execution of the character, the world, and Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer's collaboration. It is exactly what you'd expect from this pairing, and it's exactly what you'd expect from an Absolute Batman book. That's a Herculean effort in and of itself, and it's worth the price of admission. Then there is the controversy about the book, which is insane. Batman beats the living hell out of white supremacists. I can't imagine anybody's getting really mad about that or feeling seen. The book is really actually not quite as cut and dry as it sounds. You take a couple of panels and you put them on a YouTube thumbnail, boom, you got something there. But the book is about violence, and it's about acceptance, and it's about Batman's relationship with his father, which I think is hilarious because, like, at the end of the day, it's all about family. But, you got these two running stories. You got the story of Bruce seeing a photo of his father in a protest when he was a young man. And then you see Bruce interacting with a priest who apparently was in the same protest with his father now in the today times. And you see how, in the beginning, when Bruce is a young man or a boy talking to his father, he sees the world very cut and dry and very black and white, and is in awe of his father and his ability to stand up against what he perceives to be injustice. And then you have the present day where he's like, I'm going to take that cut and dry concept and I'm going to break arms and drive into buildings and blow stuff up. And it's going to be epic and awesome. And it's going to be gorgeous looking. But then you have that contrasted against the story with the priest, where the priest is like, I was also there. And I also have, this purpose that I serve. He's a member of the community. He's well known among the people who Batman fights against, and Batman, unapologetically, monstrously, just tears this group apart. And the priest immediately kind of denounces that level of violence and seeks to help, medically, the people who have been beaten up by Batman. There, no good piece of fiction is black and white. It is not, it's not cut and dry, which is what this book is about. I'm not, and by the way, I want to make it perfectly clear that I'm not suggesting that there is a both sidesism situation in this book. I'm not here to suggest that these white supremacists require some level of understanding and patience. I'm moreover talking about how D-Dubs approaches Batman's approach and how he questions whether his more radical approach to their radicalism is what his father would have wanted. And that is very interesting. And it elicits a lot of emotion, I think, in a lot of people, whether they know it or not. You didn't notice necessarily, but your brain did. And in my case, I couldn't help but be upset with the priest and his interpretation of events, because for him, he's like, we need to be patient. We need to be compassionate, and we need to always be ready to accept people when they are vulnerable and hurt. And I don't disagree with that on a fundamental level, but I do. But I don't feel like that's working. And it's interesting to see that played out in this. Like, Batman at the end of this story basically feels like he let his father down by listening to his baser commands and tearing this place up. And it's so interesting to see that in a book like this and have it be so oddly interpreted and maligned by the small and vocal minority of people who didn't like this for reasons that I won't get into. It's been said in the chat, but if you are like, yo, leave those poor people alone. I see myself in them. Maybe that's a problem, but it's also a wonderful opportunity, don't you think? Because in this book, in the context of the story, Batman tears up a whole town full of people, basically. And, there's very little one can do about that, but it's fiction, so it's okay that it happens over there. If you see yourself in the place of the townsfolk or any of these members of these these white supremacists, and you see this and you feel seen or judged or confused, dwell on that. And that's what I'll say. Instead of being F you and stuff like that, which, I mean, if I saw you in this situation, I would. But because reading is a private, singular activity, if you read this book because you think Absolute Batman is an absolute unit and you think that's cool and you pick up your axe, kick ass, whatever, but then you read this and you go oh my God, if I were in this book, Batman would be breaking my arm in half. That's a great opportunity for you to go is that what I want? And it doesn't have to be quite as simple, as I don't want Batman beating me up, or I don't want to believe that Batman would find me repugnant. But maybe it is that simple. Maybe it should be. Maybe it should be that kind of realization. Sometimes it takes that kind of level of, simplicity and large scale spectacle to shock people out of whatever they're in. Because I do believe that like we're in a real weird and bad place where we have been completely cordoned off from community and from each other. Like, in our conversation with Kelly and Lanzing, we were talking about the idea of like Star Trek fans, right? We were talking about like, I'm a big fan of Discovery. I only like Lower Decks. It's like there's you're under an umbrella. The umbrella is called Star Trek. But everything in our lives has become a bubble. Like, it's not enough that I like Star Trek. I have to like this particular Star Trek. And if you like that other Star Trek, then we are enemies and we are not in any way similar. No, the core is all there. If you like superhero comics, then my friend, you are under a large umbrella, which believes in fairness, equality, understanding, compassion, and has, and if this appeals to you, you have a kind of black and white sense of morality. That's just there, and allow that to wash over you. That being said, and I don't like to do that in this show very much. I really try not to do that because I don't want to get into it, because I think that we've been conditioned to hear particular words, phrases, or even intonations. And when we hear them, we have a visceral emotional reaction to them, whether we even hear the words that are being said or whether we only hear the specific, word keywords that are being used. And it sensationalizes us and drives us into a frenzy. And it's like, so I try not to upset the apple cart, so to speak, when it comes to that, because I really just think we should just be here to talk about comics. But this is a book that's important and it's special and it's and it does a lot of things. As I said, the biggest thing it does is prove that Absolute Batman is a long-standing brand, though with a caveat, like everything, as long as you have a killer creative team on it. I think that one could woefully misinterpret or misjudge or misunderstand Absolute Batman and screw it up. But I doubt that there are people at DC who would allow that to be such a failure that it would hurt or irreparably damage the brand. That's a pretty exciting and successful test. The other thing that D-Dubs is doing is he's ratcheting up what he's seeing in the world that he lives in and sensationalizing it in this work of fiction to talk about something, to start a conversation, which I think he's successfully done and what he's always done. And so I applaud him for that. It's a fantastic book, and it's great to see. I mean, like, the reality is, if you sympathize with the people that Batman beats the living crap out of in this story, then you probably also watch Indiana Jones and go, whoa, he's indiscriminately killing all these poor Germans. Like, I'm not suggesting that, like, if you disagree with me personally, you're a Nazi. I'm just saying that, like, there are some things that are cut and dry, and there are some things that are, like, black and white. White supremacists. I mean, come on, man. But yeah, gorgeous looking book, really well written. It's the kind of thing that you'd expect from Daniel Warren Johnson. It's nothing short of perfection, as it normally is. But yeah. So as a result, we have concluded our discussion of the new books. So now it's time for me to pick my book of the week. And I think we all know that it's going to be Absolute Batman. And it's because not only is D-Dubs' story great, but it's complements the additional stories from James Herron and Meredith McLaren are also good. So it doesn't detract from the whole. It makes it a good reading experience entirely from cover to cover. So yay, check that out. Let's jump into our super chats, and then we will talk about what books are coming out this week that we think you should check out. Here we go. Blended time 162 can't stick around, wanted to support. Please do a silly face so I can watch it back later. Also, my elbow has had a phantom pain since New Comic Book Day. Help. Go to the doctor, man. I'm sorry. I'm yeah. I don't know, man. I'm not a doctor. I'll tell you this though. One time, I think it was on House. Phantom pain. If you hold a mirror up, don't worry about it. Just get the help you need. But here's your silly face. I don't know. I'm not your monkey. I'm not going to do that. Valiantorian 5815. What's your favorite Dead Man story? I do not have a favorite Dead Man story. If I do, it's probably just Dead Man featured in 52. That was a really fun story. Overall, just 52 is, work of, unbelievable fiction. But yeah, I do not have a favorite Dead Man story. I'm sorry. Hugzilla 0, from all of us to Tiffany, we wish her the swiftest recovery and best of health, and much appreciation to you, Sal, for all that you do. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. I also forgot to mention, I don't know why I did, just slipped my mind because I didn't have it written down in front of me. But the Comic Book Community Awards were this past Saturday night, and you're looking at the recipient of no fewer than 5 awards from the Comic Book Community Awards. And it was a really, truly humbling experience. And I am deeply thankful to not only that group who made those decisions, but also to you, you watching right now, because you helped to vote for those categories, and we do appreciate you. So thank you. Thank you very much for getting us there. That was really nice. And you'll see one of those awards. We have actually won for best comic reviews for this show from last year on the set right now. But you'll see that next one somewhere around here. Definitely in a place where you can see it. And I will tell you, when we first got this studio, there's a little waiting room, and there are a whole bunch of awards on a table. And those are long expired, which is because awards expire. No, they're really old, and they belong to no one because the businesses that won them have long since gone out of business and are gone. But they all still remain in this husk of a building. And I'd consider taking a couple and putting them on the set and being like, "Look at us, we won some awards." But I don't need to do that anymore. We have some real ones. But anyway, thank you, Hogzilla, for allowing me to do that. Dylan Hall 6711 says, love the annual this week. Any other books like it? Speaking to social issues of the time. I know Bendis Avengers had a few issues that did. Bendis Avengers always got something to say. Bendis always has something to say. He usually uses Kitty Pryde to do it. There actually is a noble tradition of Batman annuals dealing with racism. And I think that's kind of funny because the most kind of sensationalized cover, the one that always captivated my imagination as a kid, not in a way where I was like, oh boy, but more in a way where I'm like, oh my God, because these people are kind of scary, was a Batman annual from, I want to say 89, which was a Detective Comics annual. It is a Detective Comics annual number 2 from Batman 89, which showed Batman battling with the KKK. So that's one that immediately springs to mind. Mimi Digsit says, thrilled to catch a stream. Happy late Halloween. Happy late Halloween to you. I hope that you had a wonderful time and that you were able to dress up, and if not trick or treat, certainly have a party or go to one. The great Devlin says, I can't stay, but I wanted to say I finally read Ghost Rider Road to Damnation since it's one of my favorite back issues. Johnny Blaze is an idiot. Yes, he is. It's actually funny. I think I may have seen one of your comments on that very episode very recently, but yes, man, Johnny Blaze is a moron in that book, and we got some real flack for talking about how stupid that book was. And it's so funny because I was like, I think it's one of those things where it's like people like art a lot, and they're just like, well, the Clayton Crane art is amazing, so if you said that book is stupid, then you must be a monster. And it's like, I can't help you, man. But yeah, it was. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Emoji Matt 87. It worries me that people are upset that Batman beating up a white supremacist. Come on, come along, Bort. Oh, are you talking to me? No, my son is also named Bort. Yeah, I genuinely believe that those who say that they're upset about this book have never read it. They belong to maybe 2 or 3 camps. The camps of people who have never read it, who think that they're being talked to directly, the people who did read it but saw themselves in the people being beaten up, which, again, don't say that out loud. And number 3, the people who have a vested interest in sensationalization. Is that a word? People who grifters is what I'm saying. People who are like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to cash in because anyone's talking about something, and it's something that I don't have to do a lot of research in because it's not a very long story. Nightwing Forever 100. Hi, Sal. I am completely new viewer. Well, thank you very much for welcome to the show, man. And I am in love with both channels and was wondering, do you take recommendations for back issues? If you do, could you please do Batman Battle for the Cowl? Nightwing Forever 100. Thank you very much for joining the crew. We do appreciate you. You are a member of what we call the population, because comic pop population. I didn't come up with it; the audience did. But I do love it, and it's way better than Salads, which Tom King came up with, and I did reject out of hand. But yeah, man. I've always wanted to do Battle for the Cowl. It's on my list. I've never wanted to do it more than the books that I do that are Batman related before we get to it. So, but we do. I don't take requests like, oh, the next episode is going to be picked by the audience. But I do listen to requests. So, like, if people do make requests, I do always look into them. So it never hurts to ask. But thank you, man, and welcome to the population. We appreciate you. Cat Lawyer says, Absolute Batman was great. It seems like it's pushed into non-fan circles, and that's a good observation. Even my sister bought a copy. It's nice that creators have a space to run free. I agree. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for comics. I think it's a great book and a good representation of the material. Though, I hope that like non-comic readers dig it and that they develop a taste for Daniel Warren Johnson's art because it is dope. But yeah, so I love that. Thank you. Matt Sherlock 9636. Comics you know are Nazi punching. Movies too. Agreed. Thankfully, there's plenty of them. We made a ton of them in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. Big Busta 000 says, I see a lot of parents groups with other parents to take their kids dedicated Halloween neighborhoods. My area was empty of trick-or-treaters, but if I drive to another area, more activity. Yeah, we had an adjourning town that had like police tape and cones and cop activity to like designate it. What the hell are you doing? No. You need no. You trick or treat in groups and you hit every neighborhood. I don't know about you guys, but like when I was a kid, my street was like a dead end road that had very few young families on it. We had the one house that had they made little individual packages of treats. Talked to them for 30 minutes because my mom was friends with everybody in the area. We get in the car and we go to like 3 different towns and just go to the main roads, the big ones, the big roads with like lots of decorations and stuff. My haul was substantial. Matt Sherlock returns to Clayface movie pitch. He makes a movie with baby doll Roxy Rocket, the actor who plays Grey Ghost, a young up-and-coming stuntman Grayson. What you want is a team book, my friend, called The Has-Beens or The Actors, the acting troupe. But I mean, listen, I would not want to see that movie, but I would talk about that comic book. Catatonic Greaser, just want to give some thanks for adding my turn into bones and circuitous scheme to my vocabulary. Nice. Welcome to the population, man. You're officially a one of us. Dan V900, Batman and Robin Year 1, and it's so great. Or so well, so great. I didn't pick it up. I was going to actually because of how few books I read this week, but I didn't get around to it. And it was one of those things where I was like, it's issue 12. I'm so far behind. I'm just going to buy the volume and read it all there. Last Halloween didn't end well, but it had great art. Issue 9, which led it to 10, clearly was influenced by part 2 animated film, which Gilda and Alberto's relationship didn't buy it into it. It's bad synergy. I dropped that book after issue 3 or 4. I mean, don't waste your money on that. It's real bad. Cam, it's me, Cameron. Hi, Cameron. At a time when mainstream media is bending the knee, I'm glad a mainstream book, arguably the mainstream book, is standing on business. Cheers to DWJ. I agree. I think that comics are a funny space because they never move the needle culturally. Like they never get the respect, the attention, the media coverage that they deserve, unless something happens. Unless there's something significant or something. I don't know. It's funny. Comics are a weird place where it's like you never get them. They never have the money that their rival media groups have: video games, movies, television. But they always get the blame when something is sensationalized, taken out of context, or just blown out of proportion. Um, I can see why they appeal to folks who were bullied. Because that's definitely the activity of those who commit that. Hayden Hamilton ordered DWJ art book on Kickstarter. Can't wait. Nice. I got my Extremity book from his Kickstarter, I believe. SPC Tombo says, if you were able to take any comic run, past or present, what movie would you make based on that run and why? At this point, it's funny. I'll just use an example that I used in my recent episode of Elseworlds Exchange with DJ Woolridge. It was a great episode. We chatted about Spider-Man Brand New Day and that whole world. I would love to see them do a Torment adaptation, where it's rainy, it's scary, it's dark. There's one monster. Pete's trying to fight it. Meanwhile, MJ's doing her thing, somewhere else. I think that would work. Scaled down budget, really hype up the effects. I was gonna say Lizard originally, but I was like, they did Lizard in No Way Home, so switch it with Vermin and just make it like really scary and weird. Push the envelope for like PG-13 and just live in it. Not every movie has to be the biggest effing thing in the world. Doc Ock was going to blow up the city in Spider-Man 2. The stakes need to be about this schlub who lives in Queens who's going to die. That's the story. So that's my pitch. Thorn Identity, welcome back, man. Good to see you. Thank you so much. I would never have purchased this Batman annual if not for your critique right now. Thanks again, Sal. Well, thank you, man. I hope you dig it. You wouldn't have bought it, but didn't you hear that it's the worst/best comic ever made? Honestly, for me, when it comes to D-Dubs, sight unseen. Whatever he makes, I go, oh, I guess I got to buy that. And then I read it. I'm like, yep, I loved that. So funny. But I'm glad I convinced you to check it out. I hope you enjoy it. If you didn't, I totally get it, but I hope you did. Mako Goblin, great name. Personally, I always appreciate getting into it, although I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. When you do give a take, it's always well-spoken and reasonable. Love the show as always. Well, thank you, Mako Goblin. Fantastic name. Again, I appreciate it. I'm trying, man. I don't want to I'm alone. I'm not working with my favorite person on the planet. And she technically, she does a lot for this show and for me. She reins me in, certainly. Keeps me from saying really stupid shit. But also, I'm inspired to be better, more eloquent when she's around. Whenever the other concern I have whenever I'm talking about this kind of stuff is that I'm woefully underqualified to talk about it because I'm a comic book reviewer on the internet, but also I am, I'm a teacher. So I have some credentials. Some would say that disqualifies me from talking about anything because people have a problem with teachers now. But, I appreciate it. Thank you. Little Runt says, worse, no, Batman in DCU or MCU wrapping up again. I don't know what that means. Yeah, there is no Batman. Oh, worse. What's worse? No Batman in the DCU or MCU wrapping up. I mean, right now, I think that no one would be upset if the MCU wrapped up. So, and when I say wrap up, I mean, they're just going to reboot it. So at this point, I'm like, bring it on. You got to have Batman in the DCU. But also, so yeah, I guess Batman not being in the MC or in the DCU would probably be the most blunderous decision they could make. USS Crazy Bat says pull lists up by a third at our store. That's nice. Ab Bats on the top as our biggest pull. Many young readers going after the Absolute books, among others. It's a great opportunity for them. And like, yeah. Back in the day, when I say back in the day, I mean like back when the direct market became like a huge thing. Marvel opened the floodgates. It was an opportunity for so many different books that would never have passed the muster. When I say that, I mean sales wise, but they were just trying everything. And and DC responded with Vertigo books and all this stuff. There was a great opportunity for anything to happen and anything to come out. But I think it was it was embarrassment of riches. It was too many choices, too many opportunities to miss something. Now, so many, there's so few books on the shelves, I think, than there were, particularly in like terms of scale. The Absolute Universe, the Ultimate Universe gives an opportunity to be like, here's a small sampling of stuff that you might enjoy. I believe firmly that there are Ultimate Black Panther fans out there who are just like, I'm eating great every day that I read this book. I hope so anyway. But it gives an opportunity. Like, I'm thinking of Absolute Martian Manhunter, for example. Absolute Martian Manhunter is one of those books where, like, back in the day, there might have been like 6 different Vertigo books and a couple and 10 different indie books that would have satisfied the itch that, like, just don't happen right now. And Absolute Martian Manhunter is that book that's like, everyone's going to the comic book store. They're all picking, like, this is a fantasy real world I live in, where like all the kids, when they're done with like school, they run to the comic book store and they're all like, oh, I love Absolute Batman, I love Absolute Superman, I love Absolute Wonder Woman, obviously. And then one kid is like, I don't want to be left out, so I'm going to check out Absolute Martian Manhunter. Oh my God, that's for me. More or less what I'm doing is I'm making a case to have diversity of story and creator, and just allowing for options for people of varying tastes. I can imagine a person who in another reality would be a massive comic book fan who thought that their options were limited, and so as a result never tried it, and conflated not being a fan of capes and tights or bats or spiders with comic books. And so instead of trying anything, they tried nothing. So I love that these are options for them as well. Flair 4488. I love the Absolute Batman annual. I specifically loved Heron's story. They were always unique and gave Absolute Batman a different feel compared to what we've seen before. Great use of his cape and movement. I agree. Yes, that was a great opportunity for them to like play with the actual visual identity of what Absolute, like, it was in no way a betrayal or a crazy interpretation of Absolute Batman. It's what the character looks like, but with Heron's style, and it worked. So that's really great. King of New York. Hey Sal. Hey, what's going on, man? Hey, hope Tiff gets well soon. Last week, a bunch of indies got announced for adaptations like EU Transformers, Black Hole, and more. Any indies you'd like to see animated or live adaptations for? I mean, I don't see Spawn happening, but one of my old favorites I'm always waiting for is a Max of some kind, but I feel like the perfect adaptation was the MTV version. Current indies and stuff, man, I don't see. I believe, based on the strength of Invincible, one day they will try to make Saga an animated series, which I think is folly, but I also see them doing it, though it's not something I'd want to see. Obviously, the Energon Universe Transformers, G.I. Joe, Void Rivals is a great idea that should be happening, and I'm glad to hear is. I think we'll see a Beneath the Trees and Nobody Sees animated movie someday. It'll probably be a show. And Hulkzilla Zero, curiosity piqued. Would Kraven's Last Hunt need to be adapted before Torment, or will Torment be rewritten to be standalone? Well, I think if you get rid of the lizard, then you change it completely. You change it with Vermin, boom, you got yourself a self-contained Torment that has no tether to Kraven the Hunter. It's also smart because, Kraven's brand has been harmed because of his terrible movie. So, with that said, let's jump into our recommendations for books that are coming out this week. For Tiffany, I will recommend Absolute Superman number 13, brand new arc. Bat number 3 is coming out. Ultimate X-Men number 21 for Tiffany. Amazing Spider-Man 15. Yay, more space stuff. Looks great. DCKO Night Fight number 1 is dropping. That's going to be a fun one. There's actually a preview for it in the Absolute Batman annual. For Tiffany, Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu 14 is on its way. I will recommend Rook Exodus number 8 because it's finally back out, in regular release. So check that out as well. G.I. Joe 13. I haven't checked this out in a while, but the Dreadnought War has begun. It's a 5-part story arc that I think people are going to be excited for if they like G.I. Joe. Let's see here. Planet She-Hulk. I'll check that out. I like She-Hulk a lot. She's a fun character. Alien versus Captain America #1 is dropping. Yes. I gotta get this from Frank Thierry. Nice. Nope. Oh, I didn't know they relaunched Gotham Academy. Godzilla #4 is dropping. I'm sure people, if they enjoyed our David Pepos conversation, will enjoy Speed Racer #4. Gargoyles. No, that's a different book. There's another Quick Stops coming out from Kevin Smith and Mark Rahill. That will be something I'm going to check out. We'll see if I like it, but I will check it out. And that is enough for me. So, as far as recommendations go, there you have it. If you haven't, I see a lot of folks are excited about Godzilla. The Kai Sei universe is coming out from IDW. It's a ton of different Godzilla books. They're all on there in the same universe. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. Starship Godzilla, for example. Godzilla. There's another one. There's a lot of them. Check them out. But yeah, there's a reading order somewhere. Outside of that, I'll leave you guys with one question that you can answer in the comments if you're catching the show after the fact. Who would win in a fight, The Thing from John Carpenter's The Thing or an alien xenomorph? It's tougher than you think. Yeah. So if you are of a mind, we would really appreciate it if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications in the settings option so you know when we go live, which is typically on Monday nights around 6:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on ComicPop Returns. I promise next week, if we are back, we will be back with the team. Although, thankfully, my puppet version of my wife back there is, is representing. So we appreciate you for being there, Muppet Tiffany, and we appreciate you for being here every week. Or those of you who are catching us on the Tuesday or Wednesday rewatch. And of course, stay tuned for more on youtube.com/ComicPop and youtube.com/ComicPopPlays. All links for everything we do are in the description below this video. When Tiffany is back to full health, she will be streaming. But if you are interested in seeing what a Tiffany stream is like, they are very positive, very open, very welcoming. And they are available for viewing for free over on youtube.com/ComicPopPlays. Again, just click the bell or click the notification below this video and you'll find the link to that. And just subscribe and you'll know when you go live. Or if you like Twitch, twitch.tv/ComicPop also works. But thank you for indulging me. I want to thank our special guests, Collin, Kelly, and Jackson Lanzing for coming by. And thank you all for being here. And thank you to our super chatters for sponsoring today's show. See you guys next week with another episode. But of course, there's so much more to come. Check out our episode of Elseworlds with DJ, where we talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day here on this channel and more over on youtube.com/ComicPopPlays and youtube.com/ComicPop. A lot of channels. YouTube has made it a hellscape, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye. That's what I meant to say. So long.